the latest stories now. Here's the ITV Lunchtime News.
How did anyone get out alive? Nearly 400 passengers scrambled to safety to escape a burning plane. The Japan Airlines aircraft caught fire as it came into land. Within seconds, it was engulfed in flames. Within minutes, everyone was off. But 5 crew members of the plane it collided with were killed.
Today was a very short decision-making period. The aircraft had the collision and the crew had to act very quickly to get passengers off that aircraft. They did an exemplary job.
Also this lunchtime, a lovely boy finding his way in life. Family tributes to the teenager stabbed to death waiting to watch the New Year's Eve fireworks. What's in a kiss? Spain's World Cup Me Too moment is now in court. How Storm UK is seeing seal pups separated from their mothers. And stepping up to the oche, the schoolboy dart star in touching distance of being world champion.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hossain.
Good afternoon. Passengers have described throwing themselves at the emergency doors to escape a burning plane in Tokyo. Unbelievably, everyone on board the Japan Airlines aircraft managed to get off within minutes, a total of 379 people. The fire started after the passenger jet collided with a smaller plane at the city's Haneda airport. 5 members of the crew on that plane were killed. They were heading to help deliver aid after the country's earthquake. How that crash happened will now be the subject of an urgent investigation. But for now, many will just watch in wonder that the evacuation of an Airbus engulfed in flames worked. Neil Connery has the latest on an amazing escape.
Japan Airlines Flight 516 explodes into flames as it lands at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. It collides with a Japanese Coast Guard plane on touchdown. Fire spreads along the Airbus A350, which is carrying 379 people. Inside, terrified passengers watch as flames engulf the plane. The pilot manages to keep control, bringing the aircraft to a gradual halt. Smoke starts to fill the cabin. As fire envelops the fuselage, the 367 passengers and 12 crew manage to flee the intense heat and smoke with just moments to spare. For those on board, it's a miraculous escape. With everyone now off, fire crews battle flames that are so fierce they burn through the plane's structure. As their efforts continue, it emerged the 5 people on board the Coast Guard plane the Airbus collided with were killed. They were on a flight taking aid to victims of yesterday's powerful earthquake. The Japan Airlines flight had come from Sapporo in the north of the country. Its crew have been praised for their quick thinking.
What we've seen today was a very short decision-making period. The aircraft had the collision and the crew had to act very quickly to get passengers off that aircraft. They did an exemplary job. It's really a testament to their training and the professionalism of the cabin crew on that plane, because it was a full aircraft on this domestic flight into Tokyo.
Investigations are now getting underway into how the collision happened. What remains of Japan Airlines Flight 516 lies smouldering as all those who were on board are overwhelmed with relief and gratitude that they survived. Neil Connery, ITV News.
Here, the grandfather of a 16-year-old boy who was stabbed to death in North London on New Year's Eve says he doesn't know why he was attacked. Harry Pitman was stabbed on Primrose Hill just before midnight. A 16-year-old boy was arrested but has now been released on bail. Our reporter Kath O'Patter is at the scene. Kath, an incredibly difficult time for his family.
It really is, Nina. And like many others across the capital, Harry came here because just up there at the top of Primrose Hill makes for a good vantage point to view the London fireworks. Now, we don't know exactly what's happened other than the fact that around 20 minutes to midnight, Harry was involved in an altercation which unfortunately ended with him being fatally stabbed. And as you can imagine, his family are shocked, heartbroken and desperate for answers.
Oh, he was a lovely boy, he really was. He was finding his way in life finally, with all the confusion and everything of a young boy growing up. And this is such a terrible loss, it really is. So I don't know. He just had his future ahead of him.
Harry Pitman's grandfather there, clearly still grieving the loss of his grandson. Now, the police are still investigating what happened. Behind me, officers are searching the park for a murder weapon. We do know that a 16-year-old boy was arrested on the night. He's since been released pending further inquiries. It's also worth noting that Camden Council suspected something like this would happen, and they said to me that in hindsight, if they had police searching people for weapons, then just maybe Harry's murder could have been prevented.
Kath O'Patter, thank you very much for that update. Thank you. South Korea's opposition leader Lee Jae-myung has been airlifted to hospital after being stabbed in the neck. The politician was attacked while walking through a crowd on a visit to the southeastern city of Busan. A man in his 60s has been arrested, with police investigating the motive behind the attack. Officials say Mr. Lee is not in a critical condition. His party has called the incident a terrorist attack. And at least 48 people are now known to have died after a series of powerful earthquakes in western Japan. Thousands of buildings have been damaged since the initial 7.6 magnitude quake yesterday. Residents in some areas are being told to stay away from their homes because of a risk of more aftershocks. The new year is seeing the NHS in England dealing with an old problem: strikes. Junior doctors will walk out tomorrow for 6 days. It is the longest strike in NHS history. NHS England's medical director, Professor Sir Stephen Powis, has warned the health service could see its most difficult start to the year ever. British Medical Association members are planning to walk out from 7 a.m. tomorrow morning until 7 a.m. next Tuesday. Our health correspondent Rebecca Barry joins me now. What impact could this have, and what's been the response from the government?
Well, this comes at one of the busiest times for the NHS. Even without this strike, this is one of the most pressurised weeks of the year. It's straight off the back of the Christmas and New Year breaks. The NHS is already dealing with rising number of cases of flu and other winter illnesses like norovirus, plus an increasing number of staff are off with COVID. Add into that tens of thousands of junior doctors walking out from tomorrow morning for 6 consecutive days. They want a 35% pay rise, they say, after years of real terms pay cuts. The government says that's simply unaffordable. Inevitably, it's patients who will feel the impact. We've spoken to one man who's devastated that his gallbladder surgery, that he's already been waiting a year and a half for, has been cancelled for the 3rd time because of strikes. To give you some context, the last time that junior doctors walked out for 3 days before Christmas, 85,000 appointments were postponed across England. The National Medical Director says industrial action is taking its toll on both patients and staff.
We're now in our 13th month of strikes. We've seen over 1.2 million appointments have to be rescheduled or cancelled as a result. For patients who are stuck in the middle, I think it's becoming really tough. And of course, for our staff who are having to cover during periods of industrial action, I think they're getting weary too.
Now, NHS England says that in an emergency, people should still call 999 or go into A&E, and if it's not urgent, they can call 111. The line from the government is the BMA should call off these strikes and get back to the negotiating table.
Rebecca Barry, thank you very much. Thank you. Working parents in England can apply for extra free childcare from today, but there are concerns from nurseries about whether they have enough funding to provide the extra places. At the moment, parents who work at least 16 hours a week on minimum wage and earn less than £100,000 a year are entitled to 30 hours free childcare a week during term time for children aged 3 to 4. The government announced plans in last year's spring budget to expand this support. Now working parents can start applying for 15 hours of free childcare for their 2-year-olds, which will start in April. The government has been criticised for claiming the asylum backlog has been cleared despite thousands of cases remaining unresolved. The Home Secretary said all applications made before June 2022 have been cleared, but Labour disputes the figures and refugee charities accuse the Home Office of losing track of thousands of people. Our political reporter Jasmine Cameron-Chaleshi reports.
A new year, an old migration target. The Prime Minister had pledged to abolish the backlog of legacy asylum claims. And today the Home Secretary says significant progress has been made.
In a small number of cases, particularly complicated cases where there are disputes about age or security concerns, there is further work to do. But we promised to address them, so we promised to process them all. We have processed them all. And in fact, last year we processed more asylum applications in any given year since 2002.
The government claims it's cleared 112,000 asylum cases made before June 2022, thus meeting its target of clearing 92,000 claims. But Home Office figures show around 17,000 claims were withdrawn in the year to September, and 4,500 were judged to be too complex for a final decision to be made. And the number of outstanding asylum cases made after June 2022 is just over 94,000. Migrant groups have called for greater transparency.
We believe it's misleading for the government to claim that they cleared the legacy backlog simply because there are still 4,500 cases still waiting for a decision. And certainly one of our concerns at the Refugee Council is that there are people who have had their claims withdrawn incorrectly and so are now potentially at risk of exploitation because they've got no access to support and no way of having their claim continue to be processed in the UK.
And Labour say little progress has been made over the past decade.
Rishi Sunak's claims to have cleared the asylum backlog are totally false. In fact, the backlog is nearly 100,000 cases, and they also haven't even cleared that bit of the backlog that they were targeting. That is why we've still got record high numbers of people in asylum hotels across the country, costing £8 million a day to the taxpayer. And really, they've just not got a grip.
With the government's record on legal and illegal migration set to be a key election issue, ministers will have to convince both its MPs and the public that its proposals are credible.
Jasmine, what do you make of the timing of today's announcement, what looks set to be an election year?
Well, the issue of migration has become an increasingly controversial one, particularly within the Conservative Party. And clearly the government wants to start the new year on the front foot. It wants to say that progress has been made. But critics, including the Labour Party, say that more clarity on these figures is needed. In particular, they question how the government intends to reduce the backlog of claims made after June 2022. And these figures come as there are some really big battles on the horizon over both legal and illegal migration. Notably, we're expecting to see the Rwanda legislation return to Parliament. That will be in the headlines once more. And so the government's going to have to defend itself on multiple fronts, from the Labour Party, who will be scrutinising every single announcement, from critics within its own party, and from the public, who will be looking very carefully at the government's record over the past decade or so on this.
Jasmine, thank you very much. Thank you. Still ahead, why stormier seas are creating devastating conditions for the UK's seal population. And the astonishing run continues for the schoolboy dart star, aiming to be world champion. First, a very public moment is being debated in private at a court in Madrid today. The Spanish footballer Jenny Hermoso is giving evidence in a sexual assault case against the football official who kissed her as Spain celebrated winning the World Cup last summer in Sydney. The former president of the Spanish Football Association, Luis Rubiales, has denied any wrongdoing. Ellie Pitt is at the court in the Spanish capital and sent this update.
Jenny Hermoso has just come out of Spain's National Criminal Court and told reporters that giving evidence here this morning wasn't necessarily hard, but it has been a long process. She's been testifying in the case against the former president of the Spanish FA, Luis Rubiales. At the end of the Women's World Cup final in August last year, Luis Rubiales kissed Jenny Hermoso on the lips. He apologised but always maintained it was a consensual act. She said, though, that she felt the victim of an aggression. Luis Rubiales resigned from his role 3 weeks after the kiss, and FIFA have banned him from working in the sport for 3 years. Today is part of the criminal proceedings against him, covering 2 issues. Firstly, whether the kiss amounted to sexual assault, and secondly, if Jenny Hermoso was pressured to downplay Rubiales' actions in public. The judge here is now going to decide whether this case should go to a full trial.
Ellie Pitt reporting there. Next, how the relentless storms we are enduring are also impacting wildlife. More seal pups are becoming separated from their mothers, leading to an increase in rescues and a shortage of places for them at special centres. Amy Welsh joined the team on the Farne Islands in Northumberland to investigate.
Off the far corner of Northumberland's coast, the Farne Islands are a fairly safe haven for grey seals, whose pups are being born in record numbers.
Last year we had our highest count on record. We had 3,788 pups in total. They've increased, well, they've more than doubled in 10 years. And we think the reason for this is because there's so much food for them. The Farne Islands offer great habitat, protection.
The National Trust used to count seals by hand, spraying each one with a special dye, but now they're using drones.
It takes 10 flights to complete the entire island, whereas to do it by foot would take days. We then supply National Trust with a high-resolution, large image where they can count the seals.
The best way to see the seals is by boat, which means we can stay at a safe distance and avoid disturbing them. But the other threat facing colonies like this is the increasingly stormy weather, which is causing pups to become separated from their mothers.
Jane Hardy's just had a call from the public to say a pup's in distress on the beach at Beadnell.
Little seal pup just managed to get out of the surf there.
Yeah.
It looks way underweight.
Right, let's get a weight and temperature off this.
Her North East team have helped around 60 seals so far this season. Meanwhile, in Norfolk, they've just lost around 600 pups in a storm surge.
The storms have been horrendous. It means you've got these huge waves and these storm surges, and the waves come and they basically wash the beach away, they wash the sand dunes away, and it means there's literally, the babies get washed off the island. So even if they've got a good mum that's hanging around trying to give them milk, and that white fur, it's not waterproof. Those pure white seals, they don't belong in the sea.
And while some seals will end up at this rescue centre in Blyth, they've no space for any more.
For us, it's a heartbreaking decision to potentially see young seal pups that otherwise should be coming into care having to be put to sleep because of the lack of facilities.
Doris is now destined for rehab in Essex, some 300 miles away. But Jane has come up with a short-term solution by letting some pups live in her garage.
I'm just going to pop the fish in here like this.
And while these pups are enjoying a 5-star stay, getting them out of the bath and back to the beach is crucial for their continued survival. Amy Welch, ITV News, Northumberland.
Ofsted's new boss has announced school inspections will be halted until inspectors have had more training in mental health. Sir Martin Oliver announced the decision following the inquest into the death of Ruth Perry, the head teacher who killed herself after an Ofsted report downgraded her primary school. Wayne Rooney has been sacked as manager of Birmingham City. The former England striker won just 2 out of 15 games in charge of the Championship club. And the Met Office says a new storm, Storm Henk, is expected to bring very strong winds and heavy rain across much of southern England and Wales. Coastal areas could see gusts of up to 70 to 80 miles per hour. Forecasters say there's a good chance of power cuts with probable damage to buildings and travel disruption. Finally, Luke Littler has already made a big impression on the world of darts, but can the schoolboy star go all the way? Yesterday, the 16-year-old became the youngest player ever to reach the semi-finals of the World Dart Championships. Tonight, he'll take aim at the title. Here's Sharon Thomas.
Luke,
He stepped onto the stage at London's Ali Pali to face Northern Ireland's Brendan Dolan in the quarter-finals, the youngest ever challenger. At just 16, Luke Littler has been catapulted from unknown of Warrington to household name in just a fortnight.
of this quarter-final.
Yesterday, he stormed through 4 straight sets, delighting a sellout crowd, conceding only his 4th set of the tournament to Dolan before winning a 5th to secure his place in tonight's semi-final. Too young for a beer, he celebrated like a typical teen, taking selfies with his new fans.
Now I am dreaming. I'm 2 games away. So, yeah, I'm definitely thinking about lifting the title.
Littler started practising in nappies and just a year or so later already had the top score in his sights.
You're going to get me a 180? Yeah. Go on then.
All those years of training standing him in good stead for tonight when he faces Rob Cross. If he makes it to tomorrow's final, Littler could celebrate his 17th birthday on the 21st of January as world champion and a paycheck of £500,000. But he'll still have to party with his traditional fast food rather than a pint with the other players. Sharon Thomas, ITV News.
Mary's here at 6:30 from me and all the lunchtime team. Bye-bye.